Hello and welcome back to our development of this HTML5 canvas drawing application. So last time we made this radius control, so it made it very easy for the user to change the size of their brush. Today we're going to add a color palette so we can easily change the color of the brush. So I'm just going to draw this beautiful woman here. Oof, okay, so let's have a look at this. So again, the markup is going to be very simple. So last week we made this toolbar div, and within that we had a radius div, because that was our radius control. And we're going to do something very similar. We're going to have a color or colors div within the toolbar. And yes, I am spelling colors without the U, just cause. So this is going to be our color palette, and within that we want to have multiple swatches. So we're going to have multiple divs with the same class of swatch. I'm going to close that. I'm going to make about 3 of these just to test our styling with, and then I'm going to give one an active class. So if you're not aware, you can give elements multiple classes. All you have to do is separate the classes with a space, and then you'll be able to reference it by either one. So we're going to open up our CSS file, and what we want to do is, so our color palette is going to be on the right, so we want to say colors float right, and if we're going to do that we're also going to need to say radius float left. So that ID of rad, that's our radius control area. So we want that on the left, this is on the right. Our swatches, with the class of swatch, I'm going to style these with a width of 30 pixels, a height of 30 pixels. I'm going to give them a border radius of 15 pixels, so making them circles. Obviously this is all up to you, you can do whatever you want really with them. I'm also going to add a bit of a 3D effect to it, so I'm going to add an Inset Box Shadow with 0x offset, 1 pixel y offset, 0 blur, and a half opacity white. So that's going to add like a little shine to the top. And in fact I might even add a shadow to the bottom. So I'll do a 2 pixel Y, 2 pixel blur. I'll make this one black. As I say, this is just a sort of taste thing, so you can do this however you like. What else do we need to do? Yeah, we want to change this to display inline block, because at the moment they're block elements, which means they'll have new lines before and after them, and we don't want that. We want them all on the same line. We're also going to add a margin left. I'm going to make that about 10 pixels. So if we have a look at that, wrong one. So now you can see we've got these 3 circles. There's no background colour on them at the moment. So I'm just going to, for the sake of testing, I'm going to add a background colour of cyan. And then you can see we have our 3 little swatches. And we're also going to style that active one that we set. So we have one that's active and the rest are not. So the way we select that is .swatch.active. Now notice there's no space in between swatch and .active. If there was, this would be selecting elements with the active class within an element of the swatch class. And what we want is elements with the swatch class that also have the active class. So that's how we notate that. So we say .swatch.active, and I'm going to give that a border, just to show that it's selected, a border of 2 pixels solid white. And I'm also going to add a box shadow on this one, because I've got this border to show that it's selected, but if the background colour is white then we're not going to see that. So we're going to have an inset box shadow of, I'll do it like this, so a 1 pixel Y offset, 2 pixel blur, and I'm going to have it be half opacity black. let's have a look at that. So there you go. So obviously each of these is going to have their own unique background colour, so we can get rid of this in the CSS and do this actually in line. So because the background colour is going to be the only thing that's going to be unique about each swatch, this is one of the few cases where we can justify styling things in line using this style attribute. So we're going to say style equals, open quotes, background colour. I'm going to give this one red, and then give these two green and blue. So really boring colours at the moment, but you can see that's working. So now let's start interacting with these in JavaScript. So we're going to add a new script tag. Again, I'm separating this all out into separate files. So we've got main radius.js. I'm going to call this one colors.js. You could do this all in the same JavaScript file if you want to keep everything together. I kind of prefer to work this way, but it's up to you, of course. So we're going to create that file. What's it called? Colors.js, I think. Yeah. So colors.js. The first thing we're going to do is add an event listener to each of the swatches. So we're going to set a variable called swatches. I'm going to set that to an array of the swatch elements. So we do that by saying .get elements by class name swatch. And as I say, that's going to return an array of all the elements in the document with the class name swatch. And now we're going to iterate through that array by saying for var I equals 0 and n equals swatches dot length. I is less than n, I plus plus. And I'm going to perform stuff in here. You may have seen this sort of thing written slightly differently. You may have seen it written before like var I equals 0, I is less than swatches dot length, I plus plus, like that. The difference is that in this one we're caching the value of swatches dot length. Here every time we iterate over the for loop we'd have to evaluate swatches dot length, and that's a tiny bit more computationally expensive than this. I mean, it is a really minor difference, but it's something I consider to be good practice. So we're going to do it like this, and we want to say swatches I, so we're indexing into this array swatches, which is of course the array of our elements. Swatches I dot add event listener. We're going to use the click event, and we're going to use a function called set swatch. So we're going to create this function, set swatch, and there's a few things we want this function to do. So first of all, we want to identify the swatch that's been clicked. Then we want to set the color, and then we want to give the active status, or class, sorry. So how do we identify the swatch when we're giving all swatches the same event listener? Well, remember that the event listener always passes the callback function, the event object, as its first parameter. So as always, we're going to name this event object that we're getting passed as the first parameter, and we're going to name that E as per usual. And all event objects have this property called target, and this returns the element on which the event was fired. So we can say we're going to use this property, and we're going to say var swatch equals e.target. So that's going to give us which swatch was clicked to fire this function. Then to set the color, first of all we're going to create a more general function to set the color. Because I'm feeling really creative, we're going to call this set color. And this is going to take a parameter called color. And when we're working with the color in the canvas, there are a few properties that we want to think about. Well, a couple, there's two. So of course we're using, to paint stuff onto the canvas, we're using both fill and stroke. And the relevant properties to color these are context.fillStyle and context dot stroke style. We're going to set both of these to the color that we get passed. And then finally in this set color function we want to remove active status from the element that is active, if there is one active. So you say var active equals document dot get elements by class name active. And again that's an array, so we want to index into that. We just want to take the first one because it should just be an array of one element because there should only be one active element at a time. So we're going to say active equals document.get elements by class name active, index 0, and then say if active, then active dot class name equals Swatch. So we're using this class name property of the element object, which just lets us set obviously the class name, and we're going to reset that essentially to Swatch. So that's our set color function done. So now in set color we can we can use this function. Now you may be wondering what values fill style and stroke style accept. They accept any CSS color value. That means any hex value, any named CSS color, any RGB value, even an HSL value. So this makes it really easy for us because we can say we can use the background color of the swatch that was clicked. So we can say swatch.style.background color. Background color. So elements, this is an element object, and elements have a style property, and that style property is itself an object. So within that object there is a background color property. So we can just use our set color function and set it to the background color of the swatch. Then finally we want to give the active class to this swatch, so we want to say swatch dot, going to use the class name property again, and in fact we're going to append space active to this. So at the moment it's just got the class swatch, and we're going to add active. Remember the space because we're adding multiple classes. Obviously we need that space to separate the classes. So let's have a look at how this is running at the moment. So you can see this is already working, and in fact we can use our set color function outside of the swatches. So if we go into our web inspector, into our console, start typing set color, you'll see that function pops up, and we can use any CSS color value again. So if I could say RGB 255 18020, we want to put it in quotes, and we get sort of orange. That was just a random colour, I don't know why I chose it, but yeah, just to prove to you that this set colour function is working outside of the swatches context as well. Okay, so this is already working nicely, but at the moment it's very tedious if we wanted to add a new swatch, because we have to add all of this div class equals swatch, style equals background colour, and then add the colour. And the only thing that's going to be different about them is the colour. So what we're going to do is have the JavaScript create our palette dynamically. So we're going to create an array called colours. I'm going to set this to a bunch of colours that we want in our palette. So black, grey, white, red. I'm just going to use CSS named colours because it's so much easier, but they are pretty ugly colours, so yeah, you might want to choose some nicer ones. Let's do the entire rainbow. Blue, indigo, violet. Okay, so now we have that array, we can create a swatch for each of the elements in that array. So what we're going to do is we're going to come in here and say, what am I doing? Say for, we're going to use this iterating over an array again. So var I equals 0, n equals, this time it's colors.length, I is less than n, I++. Now for each of these we want to create an element that is going to have the class of Swatch, and then we're going to add it into our palette. So the way we create an element in JavaScript is we say document dot create element, and then give it the type of element that we want. So our swatches are divs, so we want a div. In fact, we want to name that, so we want to say var, we'll use the name swatch again just because it's easy. So now we have this element object called swatch that we can work with, and we're going to say swatch dot class name equals swatch, and that's going to handle all of the styling for us apart from the one thing, which is the background color. So we want to say swatch dot, we're going to use that style and background color properties again, and we're going to set that equal to the current index of colors. So we're using that, the index of the colors that represents how far through the for loop we are at the moment. So we're indexing into colors and setting that color to the background color of this swatch. And while we're in here, we may as well add our event listener. This will remove the need for this entirely, so we don't actually need that at all, because we're going to do it all within the for loop here. So we can say swatch.add event listener. In fact, I should have copied that before I got rid of it. Click set swatch. I'm going to now get rid of that. Get out of there. Okay. And now once we have our element, we haven't put it in yet. So we want to say, we're going to use the function append child. So first of all we want to find the element that we want to put the swatch into, which is our palette element, which we called colors, I think. What do we call it? Yep, colors. So we say colors, and to that element we want to append the child swatch. Okay, so that removed the need to iterate over the swatches array again, but that's only going to work if you don't have any hard-coded swatches. So all my swatches are going to come from this array. If you want to have any hard-coded for any reason, I don't know why you would, but if you do, then you're going to have to leave that iteration in. So we can get rid of all the swatches from that are hard-coded in div colors, and save that, save this, and have a look. And now you can see this is all working very nicely, and our swatches are being created dynamically by JavaScript, and it's all very lovely. The only thing left to do is to, as you can see, when we first load the page, there's no active swatch. So we want to, on page load, we want to set the swatch to the first swatch. Now how are we going to do that? Well, remember the set swatch takes an event object and looks for a target property within that. But this doesn't necessarily have to be an event object, just as long as it has that target property, it's going to work. So if we create an object in here, just an anonymous object, and then assign the swatch, the first swatch, and we're going to get that swatch by, if you remember, we used this here before. So document.getElements by class name active 0, so that gets the first active swatch. We're going to copy that in, but just change this to swatch, so that just gets the first swatch. passes it to set Swatch in an anonymous object with the property target. Now that's sort of a dirty fix, a dirty way around this problem, but it does the job. So they have a fully functioning color palette. Next time we'll be looking at how to save these images now that they're all funky and colourful. We'll look at how to save them to the server and how to allow the user to download them as well. So I hope to see you then.